Welcome to BreaknBible with the Tully Adventures. Explore. It's a good day for some good news. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. That's Jesus' good news to us in John 16:33.
As we face this new day and all it has for us, we find courage and hope in the only trustworthy words available. Tully Adventures, explore.
The Bible.
Good day to you all. We are in 1 Timothy 1. We've listened to it, and we hope you will take some time to listen to it as well so that you can meet with us here. We're going to be discussing how the Bible affects our lives, not only as full-time RVers, not only as married people, not only as parents and grandparents, but also as individuals who want to interact with the world well. So one question we have is, what is the wisdom that the Bible is trying to impart to us about how to live? But then another aspect of what we're doing is also, who is God? Who is God? Because we use that word so much, the word God. And I don't know that we have an actual understanding or definition of who God is. And then we say we don't believe in God, or we don't want to interact with God, but we may not be talking about the same thing. And so we're using the Christian Bible to understand who God is and deal with, do we just not like it? Does it just not feel good? Or does it actually change our lives, make our lives better, help us to know how to live? And so we hope you'll go with us on this journey as we have decided to put God first. And we've got to figure out who God is so we know what it means to put God first. All right, so Jennifer, what stood out? What is the Holy Spirit speaking to you today?
So today I'm in verse 8. And it says, it's true that moral guidance and counsel need to be given, but the way you say it and to whom you say it are as important as what you say.
Yes.
So I know for my life, thinking if I'm speaking the truth, I could say it at any time to anyone because it's the truth.
Come on.
But the reality is there are times that people cannot hear you. They are not emotionally available. They are not spiritually available. They are not physically available to you. Also, the way you say it. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that not everybody receives information the same way we do. And so we tend to speak in a way that we want to hear. But that may not be how they need to hear it. And so, using some discernment, who are you talking to? Even Paul, as we went through these letters, he spoke very differently to each group and then now to Timothy himself, because it was a different audience.
Yes. And
so, don't get me wrong, there's times I want to pick up a Bible and smack somebody in the head with it. Like, come on now. But that's not going to be helpful. Okay, let's face it, sometimes I just want to smack somebody in the head, and that's not helpful either.
That's true. I feel you on that one.
But, how you say what you say is just as important as the words coming out of your mouth. Yes. And so I know for us, when we get off track with that and we speak to each other in a way that is not helpful to the other person, we have to remind ourselves, like, all the W's from when we were little kids learning how to read and write. Who are you speaking to? What are you trying to say? When are you saying it? Is it an appropriate time to discuss that? Who, what, when? Where are you at? Sometimes it doesn't feel safe to have those deep emotional conversations out in public. Sometimes those are better had in private. I know as a married couple, having a disagreement, much better to, I don't want to duke it out in public.
Absolutely.
I don't want to air all that out there. That's just uncomfortable for other people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Who, what, when, where? How are you delivering it? What's your tone? Are you screaming it at them? Are you being sarcastic, have that kind of tone to your voice? Do you have that angry tone to your voice? Like, how loud are you?
Do you have that quiet, dangerous tone?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm being quiet. Oh, yeah, but you're being quiet to let me know.
Right.
The storms, this is the calm before the storm.
Right. Who, what, when, where.
How and why.
How and why. I was going to put why first. And why do you feel it's necessary? Like, what's your purpose here? You know, is it just because it's on your mind? And so you think everybody else has got to be a part of that? Or you're feeling a particular way, so you're going to make sure everybody else around you is feeling that particular way? Because they don't get to be calm and happy if I'm not. If I'm in a storm, I got to suck them into my storm. So anyway, that's what we remind ourselves of when we are not, when we're missing the mark in communicating with each other. And it's not easy. It's not easy to tell somebody, I can't hear you when you talk to me like that.
Yeah.
I can't hear you in that tone. I can't hear you in this space. I can't hear you in where I am emotionally. Like, this is gonna have to wait. And if it's not an emergency, it's just gonna have to wait. I know for myself in the past, I believed that it would always be best if we could just, whatever the disagreement was, like, let's just duke it out right now, all the way to resolve, and then we can move on. Because I didn't want to carry that around with me.
Right.
But the reality is that that's how disagreements become arguments. That's how they become fights. That's how they just grow exponentially, because we don't take the time to check our emotions. We don't take the time to attempt to have empathy for the other side. We just get deep into it. This really famous young man told me one time, you know, sometimes when we were arguing, I knew I was wrong, but I was so into it, I had to keep going. And I think if we don't slow it down when we're disagreeing, that's exactly what will happen.
Yes.
We'll just dig into being right.
I think one of the interesting things that goes along with this is that we do have a tendency, and I've done this in our podcast before, to say women are like this or men are like this. And as you were speaking, what I wanted to say was women are like that. Women want that resolution so that they can feel more comfortable. So they'll keep the argument going, because if we can just resolve the argument, then I'll feel better. And what I just realized, what's interesting to me, is that that's not how women interact with the world. And it's not how men interact with the world. It's how immature people interact with the world. I need to feel better by the end of this, so whatever I need to do so I can feel better is more important than what's best for everybody involved. So maybe I have to live with this discomfort for a little while longer so that we can actually resolve this conflict or have this conversation, or maybe not have this conversation, and everyone will be safe and okay. So immature people trying to get their feelings met do things that are good for them, or they think are good for them, but actually end up causing that bigger fight, that explosive fight, that fight that turns maybe physical, which is scary. And it's all because we don't want to feel the way we're feeling, so we're going to get a resolution for our feeling, not a resolution for the situation.
Or the relationship.
Right. Well, that's to me, that's another excuse we use. Well, I'm trying to resolve this for the relationship, not for me. No, you're not feeling comfortable, so you're going to do something to make yourself feel comfortable. It runs right alongside all the inner vow conversation that we've been having. My inner vow is no one gets to make me feel uncomfortable. And so I'm going to control my amount of suffering by making sure I resolve this conversation or I resolve this conflict right now. That way I don't have to suffer any longer than I'm willing to. but we don't have control over all of that. And as we've been talking about, when we try to control our suffering, what usually happens, we create more suffering not only for ourselves, but for everyone else involved. And so what Jesus shows us is the acceptance of necessary suffering. Not adding more into the world, not just letting unnecessary suffering go, but recognizing when there is necessary suffering, I have to die to myself. I have to let go of I get to be comfortable, or I get to win this argument, or I get to whatever it is, fill in the blank, that allows me to feel good. And that's why it's so difficult. You were right on the mark. It is so difficult because I want to be right, you know? So I'm proud of you for bringing this up and talking about it, because yeah, it's definitely something we struggle with. There are still times when I'm very immature and I want to win. And I want to win the argument no matter what. And that's not helpful. And I don't think we've ever had a good outcome when our immaturity drives what we're doing. So, very good. Yes, my love.
So if you've ever done anything like poke the bear, like you're just mad so you just nitpick at your partner.
Are you talking to me or
no,
are you
I'm talking to them.
Okay.
If you've ever done that, or you say little things out loud that you want to be saying to your partner but you don't, you just talk about them out in the air near them. Or if you've ever been in the midst of a conversation that's heated and the other person tries to walk away and you follow them. These are all, first off, ask me how I know about these things.
How do you know?
Because I've done them all. And it is an immature thing, because when I've done them, it's because I am so upset, so angry, so irritated, so whatever, that I'm going to bring this to an argument so that we can have resolve. So if it's just lingering in the air, I want to bring it all the way to argument and then have resolve. And that's just not, it's not a healthy way to do it.
Has it ever worked out well for you?
No.
Have you ever gotten a good result by doing that? Okay.
But if I let my emotions run the show, it will be my tendency.
Absolutely.
And it is definitely something that I've worked on. Even prior to knowing you, I was working on that, because I realized that just doesn't serve any purpose at all. I think in the moment that it's helping me, because I should be able to say how I'm feeling. It's my right to say how I feel. But the truth is, we are called to be responsible with our words. It is not always the right time. And just because I feel it doesn't mean the conversation even needs to be had with that person. There are times that the conversation needs to be had between God and I long before.
Yes, absolutely.
Long before I bring it to you or anybody else.
I love it because you brought up the who, what, when, where, how, and why. And if the question was only what, then the answer is I have the right to say what I want to say. That's correct, but it's not fully correct. It doesn't answer the rest of the questions. You have the right to say what you want to say. Right now, in that tone, out of the emotions that you're coming from. How many of us hate it when someone else talks to us from their emotions, from their anger, or from they're just trying to get to feeling better? And we know, I know people don't care about me when they're just coming at me with their emotions. And for me personally, that allows me to disengage. And it teaches me how to disengage, because I'm not supposed to be connected to every person's emotions. And so allowing them to just, they're saying whatever they need to say, allows me to be at peace. This isn't about me. Even if they're yelling at me and saying, you did this and you did that, when God is helping me the most, I'm able to step back from all of that. When I try to handle it on my own, that's when it becomes an argument and a fight and a problem. Good, baby. So what else is standing out to you?
This is a new topic, but it's the lines right after that. Oh, no, it's not.
Okay.
I need to take a minute and find it.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here as you're finding your verse. In verse 4, I just love the way the Message version of the Bible puts this. Paul's speaking specifically to Timothy, and so it's kind of like a father-son relationship. So this is going to be very direct, it's going to be very personal, it's going to include personal stories. I imagine it's what most of us as men wish our dads would say to us or speak to us. It's what a lot of us, including myself, find as we listen to Jordan Peterson. There's just this desire to have a one-on-one connection with this person so we could ask all the things we want to ask, and maybe they could tell us all the things we wish we knew about how to be a man or how to interact with the world. You get some of this from plenty of other sources, Joe Rogan has his podcast. I listen to it because it's like, how do I get to be a man? Okay, here's a version of that. And, watching fighters, watching all kinds of different things, trying to figure out how do I interact with the world. And really the question comes back to, who is God? Because if I knew who God was, then I would know how to interact with the world. But I'm still struggling with that, and I grew up in church my whole life. And so what I love here is Paul's going to tell us about how the church works. And it's a little embarrassing for me personally as a churchy person. He says, apparently, some people have been introducing fantasy stories and fanciful family trees that digress into silliness instead of pulling the people back into the center, deepening faith and obedience. And I love this because a metaphor that's been in my mind has been God is that bullseye, the center circle that we're trying to get to. And what is so easy to do is think that everyone is on the same journey as me. We're all kind of moving towards God, ideally, from the same place. But if we start with this is the center of the circle, what we actually have is a huge circle that's around it. And every human being is somewhere along the line of that huge circle, moving towards God from a different direction than we are. Even if it's just the slightest different direction, still what they need is different than what we need in order to move to the center, which is God. Yes, my love.
So, reading the Bible, once I've read the Bible, I shouldn't expect that I will understand who God is completely.
Absolutely.
Reading the Bible just helps us learn about who God is. Is that accurate?
Yes. And the more times we read the Bible, it's different each time because we're coming from a different level of maturity. We're coming from a different place of where we've been drawn to. So something you could do with this is take any kind of opposites and put them on the opposite sides of that circle. So estrogen and testosterone, chaos and order, beauty and the grotesque, light and dark, harmony and disharmony. All of those are out there. And then, to make this metaphor even more difficult, to add a layer of complexity, people don't move in a straight line from one of these areas directly towards God. In fact, many people are trying to run away from God. And we think that there are good things and bad things in this world. There are definitely evil things, but usually the evil thing is even a good thing that is taken too far.
Skewed just a little bit.
Sure. So we're trying to run towards beauty because we think God is beauty. Or love and hate. Love and hate is a really good one for talking about God, because we hear so often God is love. And we think that means that God cannot hate. But God hates sin. God hates the things that pull us away from him, that get in the way of our relationship with him. And so God is the center, because the integrity of God is to live in the tension of being pulled out towards all these things perfectly. God can be the center of love and hate, light and dark, estrogen and testosterone, and never get pulled in any of those directions. But we as human beings get pulled towards one or the other. We claim that if we're going to love, that means we cannot hate. And so we get so empathetic with people that we stop hating their sin. And we're not compassionate towards the rest of the world. We're not loving to the whole group. We're just loving to individual people. You can do it with empathy and compassion, or liberal and conservative, or progressive and, whatever dichotomy you want to use, you can put them out there. Mm-hmm. And our problem is we're not just being pulled towards one. Mm-hmm. We're being pulled towards all of them at the same time, and deciding, like I said, you can move towards beauty and think that you're getting closer to God. But actually what we've done is decided that beauty is our idol. And if we can just be beautiful enough, we'll have a good life. And it's hard to believe when we hear people who have pursued being beautiful, models, actors, things, people who utilize their beauty for the entertainment of others. It's hard to hear that their beauty has become a problem, and it's actually causing difficulties in their relationships, difficulties in their life. We go, how can beauty is a good thing? We judge it. Mm-hmm. And so one of the problems is we're not making observations, we're judging these things. And people go after beauty and they get too far, they're actually moving away from God towards beauty, instead of living in the tension between the beauty and the grotesque. And then you have someone like, say, Rob Zombie, who's running wild towards the grotesque. And is there any beauty left? And so God is right there in the middle, not being pulled towards any of these things, while all of us living life are being pulled by all of these tensions. And we lose our integrity as we move out towards any one of them, or any group of them, instead of being centered with God. Yes, my love.
I was just going to say, so I can think of examples where people have gotten addicted to, say, plastic surgery, mm-hmm. and they've, in their attempt to become the most beautiful, they actually flipped it all the way to the grotesque.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm trying to understand this better. Yeah. So when we take one of those things, mm-hmm. and we place it as more important than that center balance of God, mm-hmm. then that's when we're worshiping something other than God. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we don't often recognize it, right, because we tell ourselves this is a good thing, God is good, mm-hmm. so we must be moving towards God.
Do you have any examples of that in your life? I can think of one for mine.
If you'll tell me your story, then I'll try to remember a story of my own.
So mine was, but I'm working to take care of my family.
Yes, and family is a good thing.
But I'm working to provide for my family.
Right, and work is a good thing, right? If we're being judgmental.
Right, work is a good thing. And I was providing for my family. Mm-hmm. But the moment that we got past necessity, mm-hmm. and I began trading things for work. So I began pursuing work harder than anything else in my life, including taking care of myself, my relationships, my time, my rest.
Allowing people to help you, allowing other people, absolutely. So, you're right on track.
So, and it's funny because a lot of people will attribute that workaholic thing to men. That's That's
Sure.
traditionally a man's role, to become a workaholic and whatever. But in this case, no, it was me. And, you know, I meet a lot of people who are in that same boat. I remember one time you and I were in a situation. I was traveling for work, and we were having a situation, and it was dire. Our relationship was on the line, and I needed to go home. I needed to handle it, and I was really torn because I had never left work early, and I was going to have to leave before I could fulfill my contract obligations, and I was just distraught, just a mess. And one person said to me, "Doesn't he know this is your work?" And I was really puzzled over that. And yet another person said to me, "Your family is more important. Go home. I'll be praying for you." And in that moment, I really thought about something that we call OOI, order of importance.
Yes.
God was first, and what would be more important if I looked at it through Jesus's eyes? And it would certainly be my family before my work. So it would be
In this instance. Because we have to remember, you still have to come back to who, what, when,
yes, exactly.
where, how, and why. So
yeah.
I know you've told this story a lot. It means a lot to you.
It
because
does.
It's a big changing point for your life. What's so difficult when we talk about dying to ourselves, and I'm really grateful you bring it up, and we're in a very good flow right here, because you've talked about who, what, when, where, how, and why. You need to answer all of those questions.
Yeah.
And part of understanding this whole big circle issue is recognizing and being willing to hear from other people. Where am I being pulled towards? Because family is a good thing, work is also a good thing. And it's so easy to put them on opposite ends of the spectrum, and I don't think they are.
No.
But I do think that it is normal in life, as we get pulled away from God towards our career, towards work, towards defining ourselves by what we do, which is all in the same kind of category. It still is about us and not about God, not living in the middle of this tension. And so I would say that family may be on the other side of work, but it's not directly opposite.
No, not at all.
But what happens is, as we get pulled towards work, we are moving further away from our family. We are moving further away from everything that's on the other side of that circle. And we can often get caught being pulled in one direction and missing the balance.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a turning point in my life.
So what I want to say to go along with this is, for you personally, when you bring up this story, it could be easy for someone to hear, oh, family is the most important thing. It's more important than work. I should pursue family. And my point is, no. You're actually probably already more towards the family side than the work side anyway. And so you're still missing being in that center where God exists. You're being pulled towards family, so you'll be pulled away from work, away from the things that are on the other side. So as we listen to these stories, as we talk about dying to ourselves, when you hear someone's story, and I've done this so many times in my life, I hear someone else's story and I try to think, what is the meaning? What are they telling me? Oh, they're telling me that work is more important than family. Oh, they're telling me family is more important than work. Oh, they're telling me if I could just have the American dream, if I can get married, that's more important than being single. If I can have a couple kids, that's more important than being barren or not having children. If I can just do this thing, which all of it is on the outside of the circle, then I'm going to be happy and not suffer as much. And for us personally, it still comes back to those inner vows. How do I control my suffering? And now I'm going to give you my personal hot take that Jennifer is not responsible for in any way.
Oh.
Yes, my love, go ahead.
I wanted to say one more thing about that.
For sure.
it really is an instance by instance thing, and thank you for bringing that up. There was one person that sent me another message besides those two that I had totally forgotten about.
All right.
And what she said is, we know that you've always worked hard, and so trust us when we say the work will be here when you get back.
Ooh, interesting.
And so there was a place for me to work hard.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there was a place for me to take care of my family. In that instance, the balance was taking care of my family.
Yes.
But there were other instances where taking care of, that instance, the job was the most important thing.
Yes.
When it was a matter of eating or not eating, well, I'm going to pick the job because it's for the better good. So.
Right. And so finding out who God is determining how do we live in the tension between all of these dichotomies. And so, pardon me, let me bring you to my hot take. And once again, this is Kirk talking, and Jennifer does not necessarily agree with this or even think the same thing. I want to say that if I were to claim that I'm non-binary, I'm actually claiming that I'm not human. I'm not willing to live in the tension between all of these dichotomies, between all of these binary choices, because I don't want to deal with the pain of it. And I understand that. I definitely understand that, because I don't want to live in this tension either. It is uncomfortable. And there doesn't seem to be any right way or way to win, because you can't just pick any of these things. So that's my hot take. Go ahead and let me know what you think. What does it mean to you? If you use this framework, does that change your opinion about these things? Now, I also want to say, once again, I don't want to live in this tension between these two things, which means, especially if I've watched my parents the way they messed up living in this tension, the way my friends have messed up living in this tension, the way that it's so easy to say that the problem is that this tension exists. And I've talked about this before. Something else that we could use is, we'll call it intelligence or ignorance. That's another one of these dichotomies. And so sciencey people who we talk, Paul wrote to in the book of Colossians, we want to understand, we want to fix it, we want to know everything we can know. And it's a good thing. All of these things are good things. They have value, they're part of life. God created them, and we can have more understanding of them. By the way, it's also hard because we're not interested in all of the things. But that's what gives value to other human beings. There's someone who's interested in all of this, and we need them in our lives for that time when we're going too far in one direction. Someone who's interested in this other stuff can pull us back. It's what comedians do. Hey, you're starting to worship whatever this thing is. I'm going to make fun of it. You're not going to like it, but it's actually for your good, because if you think this is what's going to save you, my family will save me, my job will save me, my love of beauty and nature will save me, my love of technology and the house that I've built that's temperature controlled will save me. Anytime we put our hope into these things, we're in danger. And so there's nothing wrong with science, but when we start worshiping science, which is easy for any culture or human being to do, we get to the point where we don't have space for all of these other things that are on the other end. And let me tell you, ignorance is bliss. There are plenty of people who want to be ignorant of certain things because we're helpless, we can't do anything to change it, so why should we have to deal with it? And so I love that right now we can see the tension between so many of these dichotomies, and they're so available to us, particularly on social media sites. We're trying to figure out who is God. He's right there in the middle, and what we're watching human beings do is jump to all these different sides to take their position in one of these tensions, go too far to one side or the other, and then fight about it. And what's amazing about that, so amazing about that, is this is how God brings us back towards Him. Whatever you hold dear, whatever you're putting as an idol, whatever you're putting your hope in, that this is going to save me and stop me from having to suffer so much, someone's going to make fun of you. Someone's going to make it a joke. I mean, we keep wondering, how are there people who believe that the earth is flat, this flat earther thing? Well, when you get to scientism, and science is your religion, then there are people who are going to come out there to make fun of you because you've gone too far. Science is a good thing. Science is a great thing. But when you take it too far and make it your religion...
Right, because you can... I'm thinking of a great example.
Yeah, please.
Years ago, let's say you're in the grocery store and you're walking with your cart and you bump into somebody. You would likely apologize, there'd be some exchange, and you'd move on. Today, you're in the grocery store, right? We have lots of electronics. Now, I love my electronics. I'm not gonna lie, it keeps me in touch with my family. Like, there's so many things that we do with our phone, and I love that. But if you take it too far, now we're in a situation where you bump into each other at the grocery store, and you either, one, don't say anything, you don't care, because you don't have to interact with people, or two, somebody shoots somebody or knifes them because they bumped into them at the grocery store. It's like, when things are pulled too far, then everything gets skewed.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's so easy to do.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, there are days I want to pop in some headphones. I want to go to the grocery store. I don't want to look at anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I just want to do what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or I'm on the road and I don't want to wait for everybody else. I want to do what I want to do. I don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right. So, with all these concepts that we're going through, want to think about them, want to consider them, want to consider how they play out into the world, want to consider this hot take. And it sounds like I'm against non-binary, people who say that non-binary is a good thing. And that would be judging instead of observing, which is going to cause a problem. So I'm just trying to make observations. And here's the whole point. So if you're only going to listen to one thing, listen to this. This is the real hot take. Thank you to every person who is claiming to be non-binary, because you're letting us know that we have decided that we're not actually going to equally value both sides of these binary equations. We're going to claim that one is more important than the other, and that's what's causing us so much suffering, frustration, and tension. If you worship women, you're going to have problems. If you worship men, you're going to have problems. But if you come back to the center, which is God, that's when real life can actually happen. And you're reminding us, you're making fun of us for not equally valuing all of these, everything that's in this circle of dichotomies. So thank you.
That was good.
How does it make you feel, my love?
A little relieved, I'm not gonna lie.
What happens to you as I start talking about these things or give a hot take or something like that?
Sometimes I get a little tense because I don't know what's in your head.
Sure.
And I'd like to know what's in your heart, but I don't know completely.
Sure.
I can't. And so, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going to come out. And, we don't agree on everything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We were raised in very polar opposite environments.
Mm-hmm.
In my house, there was no censorship.
Mm-hmm.
In your house, there was almost all the censorship.
Yes.
Lived at your house.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so, my exposure to things my exposure to people
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, in childhood, my exposure to people was much greater than yours.
To a variety of people?
To a variety of people,
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. And because I was raised churchy,
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't allowed to be in bars or be in
Mm-hmm.
Clubs or places where people were were not churchy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have a different view of the world.
Yeah.
And how to interact with those people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to give perspective, number one, my parents were very young, 17 and 20 when I was born. But also, my dad was a nightclub musician. You know, the people that he came across were of a huge variety. And there were many good things to be learned out of that as well.
How are you feeling right now?
Uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm.
Thank you for finally admitting.
I'm talking real fast, and I'm like, but don't get this wrong.
Right. So why are you uncomfortable? You're here trying to explain away things, which means you're running into one of these dichotomies. You're running too far to one side. You're putting as an idol something. So I want us to talk through and figure out what it is. And for those of you who are listening at home, it's easy to remember if you've listened to a bunch of ours, so go back and listen to them. I'm the guy who likes truth without a lot of empathy, and Jen's the girl who likes empathy, even if it has to kind of, the truth can kind of get, a little warbly. So you're feeling uncomfortable because, are you feeling uncomfortable because I'm talking about the term non-binary?
A little bit.
Is it the term non-binary or is it people? Do you care about the thing or about people?
I care about people.
Yeah.
And
yes, you're hurting right now and crying. There's probably someone close to you that you're thinking of, a lot of people who you work with, and
a lot of people who I know and love.
Yeah.
And I hate that they're already hurting. And I have no control over it, but I wouldn't want them to misunderstand and be hurt by anything that we said.
Right. And so even if it's accurate, the fact that it's not empathetic enough is painful for you. Is that what you're telling me?
That's what I'm telling you.
Okay. And so that's another reason why I wanted you all to remember, when I'm talking, there might be a little bit too much, I can't even call it truth, because I'm just searching. I'm not judging whether what I'm thinking is necessarily good or bad. I'm just trying to make observations. I'm in a scientific mode. Here's a theory. Here's an idea. What do I have that I know about that might prove it or strengthen it as an argument? And then what do I know about that pulls away from that argument? And I like that in 1 Timothy 1 verse 5, the whole point of what we're urging is simply love. Love uncontaminated by self-interest and counterfeit faith, a life open to God. And what's scary for me is that I do believe that you have a tendency to run so far towards empathy, to trying to care about individual people and people that you know about. And once again, empathy is a good thing, that it can allow the truth to become more and more warbly. As the further you get towards empathy, or past empathy to idolizing empathy, empathyism, putting all your hope and faith and belief in empathy. If I can just care about a person enough, that's what's going to change their heart and mind. There is a place where all truth becomes, it dissolves. You can't even tell if there's any truth there, because the individual person has become more important than everything else. And that's why I'm trying to understand. I think that God is right there in the center and never pulled in any given direction, but is the balance, the perfect point where all of these things exist. So God is empathetic, and God is also compassionate. God does not let his empathy overwhelm his ability to care about the group. So he doesn't allow, I'm thinking about this one singular person and I don't care about the group. God also doesn't jump to that other side where all he cares about is the group, to the detriment of that one person or to losing that one person. And it's why we love the story that Jesus tells about the one lost sheep. God is willing to leave the 99 to go and be with the one. But God is also willing to take care of the 99 in spite of the one. And we've got to remember both of that, all of that. And it breaks my brain thinking that God is capable of doing all of that at the same time, all the time, throughout all eternity. That is God's integrity, never being pulled to any of these sides. And I hope that you've all heard that my actual point is we as human beings get pulled to these different sides, and then there's some other group of people who are going to be pulled in an opposite direction, and we're all wrong. We're all missing it. We're all missing the mark of being like God. And the actuality of being is living perfectly in the middle of all these tensions. And so your empathy is wonderful, my love. And I might be being too harsh or too uncaring. And I'm grateful when you are able to pull me back. I need you. And that's why, for me, and how I'm thinking about it right now, it seems to me that the value of marriage between opposites, between a male and a female, aka testosterone and estrogen, is that pull towards these opposite ways is going to be balanced out as the two learn to interact with each other. I keep coming back to, I don't think I commented on it or anything. It was either a YouTube video or a TikTok, and a guy was talking about how when you watch a marriage over time, it almost becomes like these two people have become one person, and they don't cause all this drama by being too empathetic, and they don't cause all this drama by being too truthful or violently, I have to have my way. There's something that happens where they become one. And he said, I just don't think that all people want to do that. No one wants to do that. There is no human being alive who wants to give up their self-serving interests. And it's even more difficult as we have to face and recognize, and this is what marriage does, I have to face my self-interest. I am at all times, every single day, dealing with someone who sees me, who needs something that's different than I need, and we're in that tension because they're pulling one way. Go ahead, say yes, Lord.
Yes.
We're in that tension. And what God is doing is using these relationships to bring us closer to Him. And if we miss that, then we're going to miss what actually being is. So no one wants to give up their self-serving interest. No one wants to let go of getting their own way. And dying to ourselves is exactly what I'm talking about. And it's different for every human being. Jen has to die to, I'm so empathetic that I will care about people, individuals enough that they will change their hearts and minds and come back a little closer to the truth is important, and I have to be compassionate as well as empathetic with this person. I have to give up if I just tell people the truth. If I give them enough information, that's what's going to fix their life. Go ahead.
One of your friends was talking about you, and how you bring the truth to people. What did he call you?
He said I use a battle axe.
Yeah. I like to think of it as the cold truth.
Okay.
I'm just going to slap you with this information, and more information, and more information. And I'm just going to love you to death. I'm just going to be I want to hold it and squeeze it. I love it and hold it and squeeze it.
And of course, what happens on the far end of what you do?
The far end of what I do, it's actually the same. It's the same.
You get the same end result, but
Yes.
What is it? You just said, I want to hold it and squeeze it and love it forever. What are you doing?
I'm idolizing that. I'm idolizing that feeling.
You're smothering the person that
Yeah.
you're doing it to. What happens to the person you're doing it to?
I take away their ability to do things for themselves.
And so
I rob them of the opportunity for them to grow.
yes, and that's called the Oedipal mother. It's the tyranny of matriarchy. And it's a terrible thing. And on the opposite side, so that's empathy taken way out too far to the point where it's actually a disability or a mental health problem.
And he's not saying that I'm mentally ill that way,
No.
or he's not saying that I'm way out there. He's
Right.
just saying I'm on that track.
And if you don't have something that pulls you back to the center,
Mhm.
you know, once again, coming back to the verse, it said, people have been introducing fantasy stories. Hey, you can be the hero if you're just this one type of thing. And fanciful family trees, I love that. Everyone in my family has always been this, and so everyone should always be this. I love it. And so on the other end of the spectrum, I'm running out to be a tyrannical father because the truth is more, or my version of the truth, or my compassion for the group instead of caring about individual people's is so much that I'm going to just run off in that direction, and I'm going to use a battle axe of information to chop down every human being who disagrees with me. If I can just give them more information, I will help them.
How does that work out for you?
It does not work out well at all.
What happens?
And I'm really grateful for my friends who love me enough that they can call me out when I'm doing it. But there are so many people who I've pushed away from my life because I've just been trying to give them more information. There are people who have come to me for empathy. I remember I was on a phone call once. My friend called me and they were really having a tough time. And I listened, I heard what they had to say, and then something they said just got caught in my brain that got me out running out into space, and I totally lost any idea that I was talking to them. I got so excited about this idea that I started just talking about the idea. I didn't even know they were there. In fact, 15 minutes later, I've said, hey, are you still there? Because I had finally ended my soliloquy on this great idea and metaphor and all this stuff. They had left the phone call about 12 minutes before that. They had listened to about 3 minutes of my rambling, which is pretty amazing since they were hurting, but they were hoping that I was going to care about them. But I had no clue that I wasn't on the phone with them anymore. I had totally lost all concept that I was in relationship to other people because I was so caught up being in relationship with this idea. So yeah, there are plenty of time, and I've got plenty of stories like that because that's the place I run away from that center of who God actually is, or who it seems to me that God is, given what I'm understanding right now. And so yeah, I hope that y'all are still hearing me. We've got some poor connection going on, but it seems like everything's okay. I want y'all to know I'm sorry. What I've done is wrong. And I hope, Jennifer, you will forgive me because there's plenty of stories from our relationship where I've done this to you, so caught up in the information that I've forgotten about what you're going through. So I'm sorry. What I've done is wrong. Will you forgive me?
I
appreciate that. And it's still something I'm going to have to work on because I love moving in that direction. I love the information side of things. And it is uncomfortable for me. I hope we're still running. It's uncomfortable for me to be empathetic. I don't know how to do it. I don't feel like I'm good at it. And so, yeah, I would much rather be selfish and jump into, I can give you information. And it's funny because that's exactly how Job's friends treated him, and God just smashed them. You guys, you don't care about your friend at all. You're not interested in your buddy at all. It's heartbreaking, you know? Yeah.
And for me, I struggle with, in light of your pain,
Mm-hmm.
like, or anybody I'm talking to, I'm struggle with bringing them hard truth.
Yeah.
Like, look, if you keep going on this path, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or, you know, I hear you. I know this hurts. Like, I get so wrapped up in that I have a hard time speaking into people's lives the hard part.
Yeah.
Which is, this is not serving you.
Yeah.
Turn around. Turn towards God. You know, you're just putting yourself under undue pain.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times when I've had that opportunity, but I was scared because it's uncomfortable. You know, if you've ever not been able to say no, you wanted to, but it just wouldn't come out of your mouth. You needed to, and it still wouldn't come out of your mouth.
Mm.
That's a case of me being overly empathetic.
And so it seems to me that loving God, being with God, understanding God, comes to understanding that God is the perfect integrity between all of these points, and that he brings people into our lives to challenge us because they're being pulled maybe in an opposite or a different direction. And it helps us. It helps bring us back to who God actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't allow those people to bring us back to who God actually is and stop us from worshiping,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's nothing wrong with masculinity. But when we start worshiping masculinity, we think that we're all supposed to be, you know, bodybuilders and tough guys and whatever. And then we get to a point where we can't. I would say that masculinity is probably on the opposite side of beauty and like
Femininity?
Obvious, yeah, that's the obvious one. There's masculine and feminine, those are the dichotomies. But what do you put on that? I haven't worked out the whole circle yet. And my point is, I just heard a story about there was a young boy and he found this doll and he beautified it. It was this trashed doll. It was a mess. It was dirty. And he cleaned it. He took care of it. He took the 4 strands of hair that it had and did something with them and took that doll to his father. And his father was with his male buddies. And because they were worshiping masculinity, instead of the father being able to say, it is a human thing to make something beautiful when it is to clean something up when it's filthy. There's times to be dirty. There's times to be clean, and being able to live in the tension of that. There's times to be beautiful and there's times to be grotesque, and to live in the tension of that. And the father in this story was falling too far to the side of the masculine, being dirty, being grotesque, being all of these things that are on this side of the circle, and so could not love. In fact, ended up harming the doll and stomping on it and breaking his son's heart, because it was so much more important to be masculine than to be in that place where God is, where God can be a cheerleader for us and cheer us on. Yes, you are moving towards the center. You don't have to be the far end of masculine. You can stay right here in this space where you have testosterone, you're male, there is masculinity within you, but you can balance it out and still be loving towards beautification and beauty and all of this. And on the other side, women can be athletes and all of this. And it's not that there's a problem with these binary dichotomies. It's a problem when we say people have to live on the side that we worship. Because I worship masculinity, everyone else needs to follow me towards masculinity. Because I worship femininity, everyone else needs to follow me towards worshiping femininity. No, we're actually not worshiping God. When we worship God, you can be masculine or feminine. You can be strong or weak. And you'll know when to be these things to balance out the person that you're talking with and the people that you're interacting with. You'll have the wisdom to know how to interact with life and people because God is the center instead of being dirty is the center. So we should all just go out and live in the woods and never take showers. Or being clean is the center. We have to take 3 showers a day. And, oh man, who was it? And there was an actor who portrayed one of those people who had been raised. There was a boy raised by, it was the guy who made the airplanes. I can't think of who it was. Anyway, he was raised by a mother who told him he had to be clean all the time. And just to the point, would clean himself to the point where he had blood coming off the skin because he was, and so then worshiping cleanliness became a problem. And wildly, he was still able to do some amazing things. But at the end of his life, once that worship went so long, it actually destroyed him. And there's so many things that he could have still accomplished. But that worship of cleanliness instead of worshiping God, instead of it's okay that sometimes you've got some grease on your hands and you don't have to wipe it off right this second. What do you think?
I think that what drives us to go to the ends of those things is actually hurt.
Yes.
I was hurt in this area, so I'm going to go to the far extreme.
It's exactly what inner vows are.
Yeah.
And we've used this metaphor before. There's a horse in the middle of the road. If you can get up onto the horse, then you can move on down the road to where you want to actually be. But like a drunken person, we try to jump up on the horse and we fall over onto the ditch. Mm-hmm. So you fall over onto the clean side because someone hurt you. Ooh, you stink. Okay, I'm going to shower 3 times a day.
Right.
And then you're showering 3 times a day and someone else hurts you. Man, why can't you ever come out and play with us? Why won't you go slide in the mud and, have some fun with us? And so then you're hurt the opposite way. And either you dig your heels in and just say, I'm going to be the cleanest person that anyone has ever seen. Or you say, okay, I'm going to jump to the other side. My parents were poor, so I have to be rich. Right. My parents were this, so I have to be the opposite. And the end result, way out there, this is what I love about this metaphor and why it seems to be helpful for me. And hopefully it's helpful for you, but if it's not, just let it go and keep moving. Heaven is right there in the middle where you have the integrity to not be pulled by any of the tensions. Mm-hmm. Hell is running towards any one of the items which sends you off further and further away from relationship with people. The further you go in worshiping any of these things, and once again, they're all good things at the right time, with the right people, in the right place, doing the thing the right way, all of it has value. But worshiping any of it sends you further and further away from actually having relationships with people.
Agreed.
All right. Well, with all of that being said, thank you all for being here with us. We are grateful to have you, and we hope that you will connect with us. Let us know what you think about all these things we've been talking about. Was that metaphor helpful for you, or was it just confusing? Has our thoughts about the Bible changed anything you're thinking about? Is it just not empathetic enough or caring enough for you personally? Come chat with us. Let us know. We'd love to connect with you. And in order to do that,